What's good, y'all? Back with another video, man. And today we'll be talking about Classroom of the Elite, the newest season, season 4, I believe it is. And I haven't covered the previous seasons, but figured I'd go ahead and just address the season 4. I just finished watching it about 2 days ago. I've always been interested in this show because I like the psychological aspect of it, especially with Ayanokoji, because he's not the typical main character. And so I don't know. I like this type of anime where the main character is a little bit more interesting. You kind of got to think about what's like his end goal, and sometimes they're not always like a good person, which Ayanokoji's not a good person, right? So one of the things about that is like which makes me like the anime. So without that being a topic, let's get into season 4. So to preface this, I am bad with the names for these characters. I really just only recognize them, and when I see them on screen, maybe I need to actually like read or watch it on sub a little bit more because I've watched majority of the season on dub because I watched it on the go. And before anybody says, "Oh my God, you watched it on dub," that doesn't count. Brother, dub and sub doesn't really matter to me too much as long as I can focus or not focus, so long as I can like still pick up on the entire story and kind of get what's going on. I'm not too worried about dub or sub. The only show that I refuse to watch in dub is One Piece, but that's a whole nother topic. So I'm not really great on talking about the characters' names. We have some of the characters here in the in my background that I'm referencing right here. So for this season was definitely a different step in direction from the other seasons. I've seen a lot of people complain about kind of complain is probably too hard of a word, harsh of a word, but we've constantly seen people bring up how this season took a step back from the like genius like chess game moves that it was known for in the other seasons. And I don't really see an issue with that considering the type of like test that we got to see. So, um what else can I say? It becomes more combat focused kind of. Like you see multiple brawls, which we've seen fights in other seasons, but it wasn't like a focal point, you know what I'm saying? So, but with this season, it was much more of a focal point. And and it's funny because one of these characters on this panel, this like poster, he doesn't really get good screen time, but I've looked into him and I know what he's capable of and what he will do, et cetera, et cetera. But all in all, I don't really have too much of a problem with the season taking a different approach because it kind of gets formulaic if you just keep doing everything. Now, the whole time I was watching it, I'm thinking to myself, oh, what kind of plan does Ayanokoji have at the end? And he still had little plans here and there, like little backup plans or like co-alliances and stuff like that. But like, it was like me on the edge of my seat wondering what the hell's about to happen now. And lo and behold, nothing too crazy happened. I mean, there was some stuff, but nothing too crazy. I do kind of like the new characters introduced this season. I didn't really care for the brute guy that you see in the middle. He seemed lackluster. He seemed like literally just like a hothead, and he's supposed to. He showcases some like smart intelligence traits, but he's like also like very like strong, minded and whatnot. So he kind of like brute forces his way through things. But all in all, I don't feel like he's that good of a character. Maybe we'll get more from him in later seasons. But he seemed kind of like just like a meathead that Ayanokoji, made look dumb, right? Which is good, right? It was entertaining, especially with the knife scene and whatnot. That was good. But and of course, the White Room is something that we continue to expand upon without getting too much of the White Room still. But we still get like the whole get Ayanokoji expelled, so he goes back to the White Room, et cetera, right? So the whole plot of season 4 is that there's a undercover White Room student there to expel Ayanokoji. But the twist is, first of all, he has to find who that is, and then the second is trying to actually like not get expelled. Um, and what we find is that there's actually two white room students that are there. One being the girl at the very bottom right of this poster, and there's been another one that wasn't explicitly told to us, but we just were told that there's another person there. You know, you can use process of elimination to find out who it might be, but all in all, another problem I had with the plot, I'd say, is like the girl right here next to the brute on the left of her. I don't forgot her name. She has a dumb character arc motivation for a couple episodes where the chairman blames Ayanokoji for making her like friend slash brother figure, you know, commit offing himself and whatnot. And that was her motivation to get Ayanokoji expelled. But then, like, after spending time with Ayanokoji on the island and him, like, saying a couple words about the guy, she just drops it and is super loyal to him. I feel like we didn't even need that in this season. I feel like that was kind of a wasted, like, plot point, you know. First of all, because it was very, like, shallow. And for these characters who were supposed to be, you know, very smart and gifted, for her not to understand, like, yo, this was clearly a lie or like a ploy to, you know, get her to hate Ayanokoji. It's just like, okay, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? But all in all, it didn't take up too much time. It was over with. I'm pretty sure in like 2 to 3 episodes, so it wasn't hurting the plot too bad. Um, but yeah, there wasn't anything too like gripping as far as like the story. Like I wasn't too invested in anything that was going on this season. I was curious to see on how the island would play out because they had this whole like, oh, Koenji's doing his own thing to get first place, and Koji is doing his own shit, and then the other girl that he always talks to that had the brother as a president before, she was in her own group and whatnot. But all in all, I think the coolest like revelation is seeing how gifted Koenji is. You're like, damn, you can remember Koenji's name, but you can't remember some of these other characters' names. But it's just like he stands out that much, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. He just like he's that much more of an impactful character, even though he has way less screen time. So just seeing that he's so gifted, and I don't know if he comes out to be a White Room person later on. That would be a good twist to know that. But he is definitely very gifted, and he was able to come first by himself. You know, at the end of the season, but it's just very interesting. He's just a very interesting character to me, and he's kind of how like this guy in the middle was supposed to be. I think it's Hosen. His name's Hosen. He's kind of how Hosen was supposed to be, but Hosen's just he just wasn't right. But all in all, the season was pretty solid. I wouldn't say it was great. It was definitely not the best season at all by any means. It was probably like this might be the weakest season or the second weakest. I'm not really sure. I can't really rank 1 through 3 right now, but I know for sure that when I finished, nothing kept, like it took me about. I waited until this. I didn't start watching this until it was like on episode 10, and I caught up, and then I had really no itch to like watch it weekly, so I was like, I'll just come back to this when it's done, and I only just caught up like 2 days ago, and it had been done for like 3 weeks, I want to say. But it's just like nothing was really gripping me, and I don't, I don't know if maybe it was just like the lack of like, you know, mind games and whatnot, and it was because it was just more like physical focused. But all in all, though, season was still very good to enjoy for what it is. It just was a little bit different from other seasons. It wasn't a bad season at all by any metric, but it just wasn't good. So you know, it's I wouldn't call it mid, but it was definitely like a 6, maybe, or a 7, and that's not even meant to be a joke. But that's just what I think it is. But all in all, let me know what y'all think in the comments, man. Appreciate it.